Everybody, welcome back to the Dallas Stars Fanatic Podcast. As usual, Ryan, Connor, Garrett here with you, breaking down Game 3. Feel free to ask us questions at any point throughout the stream on YouTube, or you can tweet us at Dallas_Fanatic. Guys, we were talking about it a little before we came live. That was a weird game. It looked like Dallas was in control for the entire first period. And then for most of the second period as well, when they fought back with a handful of goals. Let's just start with each of you. What were your general thoughts as the Stars dropped Game 3, 6-4?
I thought they looked pretty good overall. I was actually happy to see how they played, and I thought they had a pretty good chance to win the game. So especially when you know that a team has got their back against the walls like that and they can perform that well, you got to be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I agree with Connor. A bit of a slow start, got out to that 2-goal deficit, but we made it up and we were there the whole time. Is one of those 2-goal leads that may be a little misleading if you just, stare at the box score or whatever. It was good to see them battle, and, water always kind of finds its level in these situations and in these hard playoff series.
Right. I like what you mentioned. They're battling for much of the qualifiers, right? And towards the end of the regular season before the pause, it seems like in games that Dallas would win, they would take control early and then just kind of put it on cruise control. But when they would lose, they would go down early and just kind of ride it out. But we've seen that completely change for the Stars in really the past 5 or 6 games. What do you guys think is the key thing that's changed for Dallas and enabled all those rallies?
I think they found a bit of confidence. I think scoring goals will do that for you when you have the belief that when you shoot the puck, it'll go in the net. You play with a little bit more of a fire underneath you.
Yeah, scoring goals has definitely been able to help a lot. It's like the floodgates just kind of opened up for him on that regard. Jamie Benn's been scoring a lot. He's been leading the way. He's second on the team in points now, and that's been a major factor as well. There's only been a couple games that he's actually been held scoreless since we started the actual playoffs here. So it's good to see him going. And then, obviously Miro Heiskanen is just killing it out there as well. So those are my couple of things.
Right. Both of you mentioned goal scoring. At this point, are you confident in saying that the Stars' goal scoring issues are behind them?
You're always a little skeptical after the regular season, but 3 straight games of a pretty high goal total will give you a bit of confidence. Playoff time is a completely different season, and if they rode the whole regular season barely scrapping by and now they find the holy grail that is scoring goals, then yeah, I'm going to continue to be confident.
I'm hoping that we have it figured out. It's looking like we do, but, we got to kind of also remember we're, going against backup goalie Francois over there. And then, playing for having goaltending issues as well. It's kind of been something that was plaguing them. So it looks like we have it figured out. But, I mean, you watch the replays of a lot of those goals, and a lot of them seem like they, could have been saved for sure. But they're going in, so let's keep it going.
Right. And you mentioned the goaltending. Obviously, Phil Grubauer has not played since Game 1. That's really changed this series as a whole. You think that Colorado probably performs a lot better in Game 2 if they have Grubauer in net over Pavel Francouz. He's been pretty good in his own right. Guys, Anton Khudobin, otherworldly in Games 1 and 2. He was lauded and praised after Game 2. Some called that the best performance of his life. And it looked like he kept that up through the first period of last night's game, but then things started to fall apart in the second. What did you guys see in his game?
Dobby's a solid goalie, so I'm not going to be too hard on him here. He's performed just miraculously for us in the absence of Ben Bishop, and starting all these playoff games one after the other, you might a little bit of fatigue might have set in there, but Dobby's a number 1 guy playing for a full-time starting spot and a lot of money, so I think he bounces back in Game 4, and this is a minor blip in his proverbial radar.
Yeah, one of the main knocks that people have always kind of thrown against him is that he's a little bit undersized, and you saw in a couple of those goals last night. People were battling in front of the net, and he's kind of trying to look around the people battling in front and kind of ends up leaving a little bit open, whereas larger goaltenders would be able to have that covered up a little bit more. But he definitely makes up for it. I think Ben Bishop might be better in the series, but once again, I mean, he's performing well. Right. Sometimes those things happen when you're going against, offensive powerhouses like Avalanche have proved that they can be from time to time at least.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's interesting you bring that up because there is always the possibility that Bishop returns to being fit to play. At this point, do you think if you're Rick Bowness that you keep going with the guy who's got the hot hand and Hudobin, or do you plug Ben Bishop in for a start and see what happens?
I think you got to ride Dobby's hot hand until it's kind of exhausted there. And if, he loses game 4, and then you might have a real conversation. If he loses game 4 and Ben Bishop is fit to play, you might have a real hard decision to make. But if Bishop's good to go for game 4, I still think you ride Dobby one more time just to continue to see what he's about.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough decision for him to make. You see with the Las Vegas Golden Knights, Gallant was riding his hot goalie, Robin Lehner. And, then we see Marc-Andre Fleury's agent tweet out, that picture of, Fleury with the sword in his back that says DeBoer on it, and so there's all types of stuff that could happen potentially in regards to riding the hot hand and things of that nature. But I would say that I think they've proven time and time again that if it looks like Ben Bishop's ready, they put him in. So I think that's what he's going to go ahead and do.
Right. It is worth noting that we don't have any concrete evidence that Ben Bishop could be close to return, right? That's complete conjecture. But at this point, Hudobin does seem to be the guy that Bowness wants to stick with. And what a move by Jim Nill to bring him in. I mean, seriously, that is something that is setting the Stars apart as far as compared to other teams. You look at Boston last night, they put in a rookie goaltender after Tuukka Rask opts out. And it's clear that they just don't have depth at that position. They throw out a guy for his playoff debut and they give up 7 goals, right? But Dallas does not have to worry about that at all because we saw in the regular season, they have the luxury of having 2 quality starting goaltenders. And Hudobin was certainly overlooked in the pre-free agency scouting period. Dallas is very lucky to have him. I agree with you both on that. Does Colorado taking game 3 of this series, obviously they needed that one because otherwise Dallas takes that. It looks like they were going to for quite a while. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion. Teams don't blow 3-0 leads. But does them taking game 3 change your outlook in the series, or do you still feel good about the Stars' chances to clinch?
I think it adds a little bit more stress to the series. Obviously, every fan wants to see their team go up 3-0, but that's a hard task, and Colorado's not some rollover team, so they were gonna win a game eventually, and they know just as well as anyone that they don't want to go down 3-0 because that makes it a monumental task. So while I still have the Stars winning this series, Colorado's just doing what we knew they would eventually do, and that's score goals and win games.
I almost feel better that Colorado won that game because we've seen so many times Dallas take their foot off the pedal whenever they get leads and stuff, and it almost seems like they play better with a little bit of fire under their butts. So I think they performed well in that game. I think it could have gone either way with a couple different saves, a couple different bounces going different ways, and so I think it was actually maybe even better for the Stars that they were able to, kind of lose, but it was still a hard fought game. It kind of almost goes to show how, in this series they really are. So.
Right. Now, after game 1, Ryan and I talked about it a little bit that we clearly thought Dallas was the more physical team. They more than proved that in game 2. They threw 60 hits and blocked 19 shots. Those numbers just pop out the page. You do not see that in the NHL too often, but Colorado came with a mentality that they wanted to be the physical aggressor in game 3. I think that their head coach, Jared Bednar, clearly marked that as a point of strategy. Did you guys see that translate on the ice, and how do you think that affects this series?
I think that it seems like it keeps getting proved over and over again every playoffs that the teams that can go out there and be the bruisers and still maintain goal scoring and not do it in a careless way that gets them a lot of penalties. It seems like those teams are the ones that continue moving on. So, with Colorado going out and trying to do that last night, it didn't necessarily factor in that much, I don't think, in their win, but they definitely had to do something to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, winning playoff games and playoff series is as much about wearing down your opponent as it is to scoring goals. So they knew that they had to come out and match Dallas's physical, style of play, and I think it definitely played into it a little bit there. We'll probably see much more of it in the future as well.
Yeah, one thing I didn't have on our run sheet in the pre-podcast planning, but I wanted to bring up with you guys, for so long when the Stars were struggling, there was so much criticism on the top line of Alexander Radulov, Jamie Benn, and Tyler Seguin, but that script has completely flipped over the past 3 games. What have you guys been seeing from them, and what are they doing differently?
Yeah, they're playing as one cohesive line, and they're playing physically, and they're putting shots on the net. They're not trying to kind of create the perfect play. They're kind of playing their physical game. They're throwing shots around. They're passing the puck. They're doing kind of the fundamental type cliche stuff that you want to see from these guys, and not try to make everything so pretty. It's almost like they have kind of taken a deep breath and been like, okay, we know how to play hockey. We know how to score goals. Let's just go out there and simplify the game and do it. That's kind of what they're doing, led by our guy, Jamie Benn. He's been great.
He has been great.
Yeah, it's been really nice to see them back playing together. It seemed like we got so many new pieces in this offseason last year that no one kind of really knew where they fit in, and we started mixing up those lines and doing a bunch of different stuff. And then there was the coaching change, and, there's just been so much controversy. But with them playing together and staying together and not mixing up the lines, it seems like we have a lot more consistency, and they're just getting back to their old ways. So good to see.
Right. And then the last thing I wanted to get to before we wrap up episode 3, we'll be back with either preview or reaction for game 4 and 5. Stick with us on Dallas_Fanatic on Twitter for updates. But obviously making news yesterday in the NBA was the Milwaukee Bucks deciding to boycott their playoff game. There was word that might trickle down to the NHL. Matt Dumba, a defenseman for the Minnesota Wild and one of the prime ambassadors for diversity in the NHL, mentioned that he was a little disappointed that the National Hockey League didn't cancel its games yesterday. However, the Bruins refuted that and said that by the time the Bucks had announced that they were boycotting the game, they had already arrived in Toronto, and it was the same things for the Stars and Avalanche. I'd love to hear generally what you two think about the potential of the NHL boycotting games, and whether you think it's going to have an impact on what we're seeing right now in our country.
I thought what the NBA did and the Bucks was a pretty powerful thing. I thought it's an unprecedented moment in sports history, and something we'll probably look back on and reflect on as something, very, very impactful, especially with LeBron and the big NBA guys taking it a step further, talking to like actual government officials, actual attorney generals and stuff like that to try to, invoke some tangible change. I was a bit disappointed with the NHL that they didn't do a little bit more than kind of just put out an obligatory statement, because you saw the MLB follow suit, the WNBA follow suit in postponing games. And I know that they refuted, that Matt Dumba call because they'd already arrived in Toronto, but I'm not really sure I know what that means because they're already in the bubble. So it wouldn't have been that crazy to kind of step back. The Bucks were in the locker room. It was just one of those moments where the sports world could have completely come together, and I think the NHL kind of missed a big moment yesterday being part of that.
I don't really necessarily know that it's going to translate over into postponing games or canceling games for the NHL. It seems like a lot of times when, it's really just terrible to see everything that happened. And there's no real easy answer for it. And so I guess at this time, I would just say that I don't think they're going to cancel any games.
Yeah. No, it's been interesting to see the way that it's all matriculating. And for me, like I'm so glad that, players are taking opportunity to voice themselves in the NBA and in pro sports in general. They should have that opportunity. And like you mentioned, Ryan, this is truly an unprecedented time. For me, like the selfish part of me was just like, oh gosh, I really, really hope that the bubble doesn't come to an end, right? Because the Stars are just on such a good run. They have so much momentum, right? I would just hate to see the rest of the season get suspended. Now, I think if you're the NHL, you got to do what you got to do. If you want to boycott the games this weekend, but then get back to it next week, more than fine. But it's like, as Stars fans, the team's on such a good run right now. It would be so disappointing to see it all come to an end. So I hope that they can find some kind of solution that makes everybody happy. That's just so hard with these situations, but it will be certainly interesting to monitor over the next couple couple of days. Guys, quickly before we sign off, thoughts on Game 4. How do you think it plays out between Dallas and Colorado tomorrow night?
This is a big one, giving up that 2-goal lead and kind of going back to 0-0 of sorts is not what we want. So I think the Stars know that, and they're going to come out strong, and I think we get the win and make this a 3-1 series.
I think that whoever jumps out and grabs control of the game early is going to be who wins. It's hard for me to say right now who I think it's going to be. I'm leaning towards Dallas, thinking just, watching how they played last few games here especially, and it seems like we definitely have had the Avalanche's number here for a little while. But I think that if Colorado jumps out early and grabs a couple goals on us, then I think they might be able to take it.
Right. I like how you set that up, Connor, because in games 1 and 3 especially, it seems like it's been Dallas who's come out and played fast, played physical, scored goals, and Colorado's looked stunned in the first period in games 1 and 3. They definitely regrouped in game 2 and took a 2-goal lead, and then in game 3 you saw them even come back and win the game. But I think the key for Dallas is, like you mentioned, getting that first goal and then adding on another. I think if you put Colorado in a 2-0 hole, you're going to send them back to that point of being stunned, scrambling a little bit. Jared Bednar is so aggressive in pulling his goalies. He'll do it with 3 to 4 minutes left in the third period. So if you can put them in a position where they're trailing by 2, I think you're going to lull Colorado to sleep and ultimately take a 3-1 lead. No matter what happens, we'll have you covered on DallasSportsFanatic.com. You can follow Ryan on Twitter at Lockdown21. Check out Connor's words on DallasSportsFanatic.com. I think you've got the recap coming up, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm not sure which one of us did it. It's okay. Either way, Connor's always got good stuff on the Stars section of DallasSportsFanatic.com. You can follow me on Twitter as well at GJones on there. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel to never miss when we break down a game before, after, and feel free to drop by comments anytime. But signing off for now, this is the Dallas Sports Fanatic Podcast. We will see you after Game 4 or 5.